Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Terence Crawford, man, after Canelo, he's actually come out here and he's opened up big time, especially talking to Andre Ward. Just kind of talking a little bit about his story, talking about his struggles and talking about his future. But the video is out there, man. It's pretty interesting, man, when you sit back and listen to Crawford. One thing I say about Crawford ain't gonna lie. I believe 100% of what Crawford says. These other fighters, I take what they say with a grain of salt. But when Terence Crawford, first make sure you like and subscribe, give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram. Become a member to the channel, leave that donation for the fried rice and chicken wings. But when Crawford sat down with Andre Ward, he was talking about his stunning victory over Canelo. You could see that Andre Ward was happy for Crawford. It was beyond a celebration. You know what I'm saying? It was an unveiling of what I think Andre Ward already knew about Terence Crawford. But surprisingly, Crawford opened up about the obstacles that almost derailed his career long before he reached this point, and about the fights that he had to take, and the fights that he wanted but others refused. His words really hit hard because for me, I'm like, damn, this man not just talking about boxing, he's talking about like surviving in a sport, that he loved, but too often pushes fighters to the edge and makes them want to quit, especially those without the right machine behind them. So that really hit home with me listening to this man talk, because he had every opportunity to exit and just throw his hands up and say, I quit, but he didn't. And Crawford told Ward plainly, he said, my rise was never easy, man. My rise to the top of the sport was never smooth. While many fighters had promoters lining up opportunities, Crawford had promoters, managers, and even other fighters working against him or ignoring him. For years, man, he felt like he was being left out in the cold. You know why? Because he was. And they didn't even give him a jacket. Matter of fact, they had him butt naked in the cold. They didn't care about Terence Crawford. Nobody cared about Terence Crawford except for Terence Crawford and his team. You know what I'm saying? But what's crazy is they left him out in the cold despite being undefeated and a world champion. That's crazy. You got a world champion. You're supposed to want to challenge him. You want to go get that belt. But they weren't. Nobody was in a rush to do that. So you got to ask your question, why? Well, because Crawford wasn't willing to play the political game. He knew the secret society was in full effect. He ain't had time for that. He was like, man, I'm not going to sell my soul to promoters who only care about lining their pockets. He wasn't going to sign away his independence to managers who just saw him as another pawn in their system to basically use him to put up against the fighters who they're really trying to build. Even though Crawford would have beat them all, they knew that was a risk too. So what ended up happening, Crawford said, it seems like no one going to love me like I'm going to love myself. So he went independent. But that independence came at a cost. It meant fewer big fights early on. It meant being left out in the crowd of boxing politics. It meant that even as he was demolishing opponents, he was still hearing those whispers, that he wasn't marketable enough. Eddie Hearn was Bob Arum. But Eddie Hearn, boy, he was sticking it to him, wasn't he? Then the shit about the investment. He didn't bring enough value. I just remember watching a lot of the videos where these promoters were talking about that, even some fighters. But he had value. But his profile wasn't as big as what it could have been. And again, Terence Crawford did things his way. So some of that turbulence that he experienced on his ride through his career, some of that shit was, self-inflicted. However, a lot of it was not. Is because he was avoided and he wasn't a company man that fighters kind of blackballed him, promoters blackballed him, manager blackballed him, and he got screwed. But he never really had, I'll put it this way, he never really needed a machine to validate him. You know what I'm saying? He knew what he brought to the table. He's just one of those guys who let his fist do the talking. Still, the roadblocks came. I mean, he had to take the Madrimov fight, not because Madrimov was the big name he wanted, but because so many others avoided him. And remember, Madrimov was the top dog at 154, and fighters were avoiding Madrimov. He wasn't able to get the fights he wanted. So Crawford went up, and the two guys who were out there all alone on as Nowhereans on an island with Wilson, they said, F it, nobody want to fight us. We're all alone out here. We might as well fight and make some money. And Crawford got in there and did the business. He even openly revealed that Sebastian Fundora ducked him, which I'm not surprised. Despite being seen as one of the most dangerous young fighters at 154, Crawford made it clear he wanted that smoke, but Fundora's team hesitated and chose a different path. That wasn't by accident. That was fear. That's because they said, oh, Earl Spence is a bigger name. Earl Spence had already been destroyed by Crawford. But you know that was a PBC thing that you wouldn't understand. But it wasn't just Fundora. When you go back at 147, Crawford reigned supreme. We saw a disturbing pattern. Fighters who were supposed to be the future. They wanted no part of Terence Crawford. Even Vergil Ortiz, Vergil Ortiz, the WBO president, came out and said, Vergil Ortiz didn't want to fight him. I remember Vergil Ortiz was one of Golden Boy's brightest stars and still is. But he was almost ready but never truly available when Crawford was calling. The narrative became injuries, illness, timing issues, but the truth is pretty damn simple. His team didn't want Ortiz in with Crawford because they knew the outcome. Even right now, Ortiz is going to lose against Lubin. Y'all may agree or may not. He ain't going to survive in it with Lubin. So, but hell, it might as well had lost to Crawford, not Lubin. But Lubin's going to whip his ass. Then there was Jaron Boots Ennis, a fighter hyped as the next big thing. Jaron Boots Ennis is a classic case of a fighter just being protected. And a protected investment is what he is. Boots Ennis is the biggest disappointment in boxing right now. All that talent, all that skill, you can see it. He's got the shit, but won't get in the ring to fight anybody with a pulse. And I'm not trying to, I don't want to approach Jaron Boots Ennis like so many people approach Terence Crawford. I'm just saying, man, he's supposed to be fighting this guy, that guy. You got the money machine behind you to make the fights, but he got you fighting Vanessians, Chikadzians. Went in there and then you fought Stanley Eunice, a washed up Stanley Eunice. Although Stanley Eunice just came back and had a big win, thinking his home country. Now you're fighting Luis Malima. Who the hell is that? But I'll just say this, man, when it comes to Jaron Boots Ennis, Boots talk, but his management team makes you wonder who it is who really isn't pressing for that fight. Is it Boots' management team or is it him? But the bottom line is, Crawford made it clear. He said these young lions didn't want to risk their records against him. And I believe that. And when fighters avoid you at multiple weight classes, it's not because you're irrelevant, because you're too dangerous. And we look at Terence Crawford. He's been avoided. But people are a little bit interested in him now because they know Crawford brings some money to the table. But they weren't going to fight him before. That's why Crawford now is like, bye, haters. Don't come over here now. I don't sell. Ain't no money behind me, so don't come here now looking for that cha-ching ching Wu-Tang cream. Remember, Crawford, he just silenced Canelo. Now, after silencing Canelo, something few thought was possible. Crawford's position in boxing has shifted forever. He's no longer chasing fights, man. Fighters are now forced to chase him, and that's exactly what they're doing. But the question is, where does he, where does he go from here? What the hell is Crawford going to do next? He got a lot going on, opportunities to fight, but he got the goddamn Omaha Police Department trying to kill him. You know what I'm saying? What's he going to do next? Stay at 168? Go down to 160 where his size is still manageable? But, the cut to 160 is hard for him too. And his speed is unmatched at 168 and 160. But I think it's a good fight at 160 for him is Carlos Adames. They've had some experience sparring together. Both of them can switch hit. Speed, power, high IQ fight, high big-time chess match. That's a really good fight. But maybe he just moves all the way to 168 where he's at right now and just stays there. And he just says, you know what, man, I'm the top dog at super middleweight. And I'm just going to fight the M. Billies, the Hamza Shiraz, maybe David Benavidez comes down. I'm just going to stay at 168. Maybe that's what he does. I don't know. But at 160, there are some intriguing possibilities. You got Alan Cannulli. That's one name floating around. But Crawford may see it as a big risk, little reward. Because Janibek's dangerous. He was a bronze medalist in the Olympics, but still, he's not a massive draw. But Crawford could seize a middleweight title there and make history yet again. You got Jamel Charlo who could go there. Erislandy Lara's there. Chris Eubank Jr. If he beats Conor Benn in the rematch, who knows? Eubank Jr. may fight Canelo or Crawford. We just don't know. But these are fights that may not be legacy defining, but that would, build his resume. But I just think at this point, Crawford don't need to build no damn resume. His resume is pretty damn tight. But at 168, I just think, so 160 is whatever. I think he'll be okay down there. But at 168, the waters get deep. The shit gets deep. Benavidez is the monster everybody wants to see tested. Benavidez says he won't come down to 175. His dad says to 168. His dad says he will come down to 168. So who knows? But one thing for sure is just Benavidez, the size, pressure, and volume will be unlike anything Crawford has faced. And that's one thing I think we all can agree on. Doesn't mean Benavidez is going to beat him. Doesn't mean Crawford beats Benavidez. But what it means is Benavidez will be a force to reckon with and something Crawford has never seen in the ring. That fight will be a true collision of styles. Slick, sharp technician against the relentless Mexican monster. There's also, I don't think they would fight, but you never know. It's Caleb Plant, a skilled boxer who could provide a more tactical challenge. But I think Caleb Plant's just a one-arm fighter, so he loses. And even Jamal Charlo. Jamal's at 160, but at 168, you got Jamal Charlo. If he decides to fully commit at that weight, look, Crawford at 168, it's not just about belts anymore. It's about legacy, about proving that the little man from Omaha can climb through the weight classes and conquer them all. But you know what's interesting about this? It's Canelo. He and Crawford are not going to rematch. Canelo said he's tired of chasing belts. His legacy is intact. Canelo, all he wants to do now is fight the biggest names, the biggest challenges, and the fights that interest him. Canelo's not going to come out here and worry about titles. He's done with that. He wants to make the biggest matches, the most interesting matches, and the biggest challenges that he finds interesting, and that's what he's going to do until he retires. So I thought that was interesting to hear Canelo come out and actually say that. So as far as a rematch between Canelo and Crawford, I think the ship sailed, going off of what Canelo's saying. Plus, you're looking at Crawford. He ain't saying shit about no rematch either. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a done deal. But I just think Crawford, trying to go up through these weight classes and conquer them all, let's not make any mistake. Every fight from here on is harder. It's going to be riskier and more dangerous than what Canelo brought to the ring. Crawford is 38. He's a champion. Somehow he's been maintaining his peak and his skill set. But man, Father Time is undefeated. You just don't know when you're going to get in that ring and get old. That's why these next moves matter more than ever from Terence Crawford. Does he cement himself as the greatest of his era by winning titles and will become an undisputed in the 4th or 5th weight class? Or does he risk too much chasing glory in divisions filled with bigger, stronger men, and all of a sudden somebody puts the bing bings on him, and now Crawford is out here in the breeze with the loss on his record? What I thought was interesting is when Andre Ward asked him about the struggle with promoters and managers, Crawford's honesty reveals something that's often hidden in boxing. You know, the sport doesn't reward the most talented. It rewards the most marketable, bringing us back to the conversation about boxing being a business. And this is why fighters have to go out there and grow their profiles to fight on the biggest platforms. You look at Jake Paul. This man just came out of nowhere. He was a YouTuber and he was very popular. But because of his fan base and his profile, he's able to come over here like a boss and run shit. So there's a lot to learn from a guy like Jake Paul. It doesn't mean you go out there and become a buffoon and do all these stupid videos on YouTube and TikTok and Vine and all those other different platforms. No, but what it means is people need to know you. People need to know you. But I'll say this, Crawford was never the promoter's darling. He still kind of is not. Because, you know, he's not a guy who's running to get in front of the camera. But what he has done is won every fight, and as a result, the camera finds him. But I will say this, he wasn't always the fighter they wanted to build around. They knew he had talent, but they were like, talent's not enough in this sport. But you know what he proved? He didn't need him. He built himself. And to be honest with you, I'm not surprised, man. He carved his legacy in the ring. He did it against all the odds, and now stands as a living symbol of what persistence, independence, and self-belief can achieve. You know, what the hell is Crawford going to do next? I don't know. But when I look at what's out there, matter of fact, let me see if I can find something here. We're going to see. Because it's not easy what Crawford has out there. It is not easy. We just got to be real about Terence Crawford and the position he's in, and to see really what he could run into. I did this in another video. We're just going to skim over this real quick. So you look at Terence Crawford. Okay. At 168, you got Canelo and Billy. You know, Martinez, I doubt he and Crawford would fight. But you got him, Billy, Martinez, Pacheco. Oh, man. Could you imagine Terence Crawford fighting Diego Pacheco? But I know they wouldn't make that fight. So you got to look at big names here. Resendez beat Caleb Plant. Shiraz. I think Shiraz is a likely opponent. I don't know about him, Billy. Canelo doesn't want it. So maybe Shiraz, Jamal Charlo, because he wants big names. Well, he's going to have some mandatories, first of all. So you got Hamza Shiraz, Shishkin, Shiraz, Jamal Charlo. So really what you're looking at for Terence Crawford is Jamal Charlo, it could be Lester Martinez, Jaime Munguia, Hamza Shiraz, Shishkin, Diego Pacheco. So Shiraz, Pacheco, Shishkin, Charlo, the back bully. Then you come down, that's a 168. You come down to 160. Oh, this is where the shit gets interesting. You got Alan Canuli, the Dominican Carlos Adames, Eubank Jr., that Cuban Hernandez. You got Isley, Olija, McKenna, Williams, Bentley, and Taylor. And you come and take a look at the ranking stack. If Crawford wanted to go down, the champion for the WBO and IBF is Alan Canuli. The champion at the WBC is Adames. The champion at the WBA is Erislan De Lara. Those are some good names, good fights for Crawford. But again, which fight's going to bring him the most money? And I just don't think, outside of Canelo, David Benavidez. But I don't know if Crawford's going to want to do that. But what I will say is, what happens next, whether it's 160 or 168 for Terence Crawford, I think it's going to determine whether Crawford remembered as just one of the greats or the greatest of his generation. I think right now for this era, I think it's without question, who runs shit is Terence Crawford. But of the generation, I don't know. But what I will say, it doesn't even matter getting into that. Just appreciate this man for what he's done. But understand what he got coming up next is going to get more difficult than that Canelo fight. Canelo was a threat. But you got guys who are real 168 pounders, man. You got guys who are cutting down from 210, 205 to get to 168. Canelo didn't have to do that. So it's going to be really interesting to see what direction Terence Crawford goes. But they all ducked him. A lot of fighters ducked him. And those who are calling him out now, I don't even know if they think they can beat him. I think they just want that, what Canelo say, payday, payday. They just want the payday. But anyway, be careful what you're asking for. Because Terence Crawford ain't no clown. He ain't no duck. Terence Crawford will tranquilize you. Anyway, y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.